northern and central areas, particularly heavy for southeast Scotland and the northeast of England as well, with a low of 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Serena Farrow.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:03, time for Cross Question, our twice weekly political panel debate show. Well, it's twice weekly during the election anyway. Your chance to quiz our panel of politicos. Joining me today in the studio, Sir Michael Fallon, the former Defence Secretary, Matthew Elliot, political strategist, former Chief Executive of Vote Leave, founder of the Taxpayers Alliance, and all-round hate figure for anyone on the left. Laura Parker is Momentum's national coordinator, and Siobhan Benita, Liberal Democrat candidate for Mayor of London and former civil servant. So you can watch us on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, on the LBC YouTube channel, Facebook feed and Twitter feed, and we'll come to your questions in just a second.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Well, welcome to you all. Let's crack on with our first question. Sally is a new caller from North Sheen. Hello, Sally.
Hello there. I'd like to ask a panel of politicos a question, and that is that the Lib Dems say they want to revoke Article 50, but surely it would be much more democratic just to have a people's vote after all the carry-on and the speaking that's been going on, and surely put the question to the people and let the people decide, and not the Liberal Democrats just taking us out on a revoke of Article 50.
Well, it's a good question, Sally. Let's get some answers from... let's go to you, Siobhan Benita, first. This whole revoke Article 50 thing has proved a bit of an unpopular policy, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think the messaging has got confused somewhere. We are definitely the party that wants a people's vote. We tried to get a people's vote through 17 times in Parliament. Unfortunately, it wasn't supported by the Labour Party. Our message was, if we had or were to win an outright majority in the general election, that would be such a massive swing, going from the 19, 20 MPs we have now up to 360 seats, that would be a huge mandate. And of course, if that were to happen, then we are the Stop Brexit party. We would stop Brexit. But actually, what we are saying is, if we are in a position of influence in a future parliament, absolutely we think the right thing to do is to put this back to the people. It started with the people. Let's give people the final say.
So it was a mistake, really, to bring up this whole majority government idea, wasn't it?
I think the messaging wasn't as good as it should have been, absolutely. And I think now
this was your leaders. I mean, it was her that drove this policy through. I mean, this is a real sort of failure of leadership from Jo Swinson, isn't it?
I don't think it's a failure of leadership. I think as the Liberal Democrats, as the smaller party going into this election, we have to be confident. We had to go out there at the beginning and show how confident we were. We are in a very strong position to influence the future Parliament going forward. In that confidence, I think what did get lost was, if we don't win this outright, and let's face it, that's probably the more likely outcome, we are still very much in favour of a people's vote. And you only have to look at how our MPs have acted in Parliament. We have consistently been at the front of the campaign to push for a people's vote and a confirmatory second referendum.
But if you fail to increase the number of Liberal Democrat seats in any meaningful way, that will be seen as a rejection of both revoking Article 50 but also a second referendum.
We're not going to not increase our seats in any meaningful way. So, of course, I'm going to say that. But I mean, our own analysis, I'm out on the doorstep every day. It's feeling incredibly good for us in the seats where we are targeting hard. As I say, going forward, I think it's pretty clear that we will have influence in the Parliament going forward. And absolutely, we are saying we will be pushing for a people's vote. Chuka Umunna is one of the founding members of the People's Vote movement. So we are not rowing back on that at all.
Well, Matthew Elliot, you are a political strategist. You've run many very successful campaigns. Give a bit of free advice to the Liberal Democrats. So if you were them now, what would you be doing?
Well, I think it's fascinating just how badly it's gone down on the doorstep, this whole revoke point. And if there's a majority for the Conservative Party after the election, and if Boris gets his deal through by the 31st of Jan, I think they've got to pivot pretty quickly to something else, not revoke, not second referendum, but actually working out what the free trade deal should look like, engaging in that debate. That'll be the agenda then, not rejecting the referendum.
Laura Parker, if you look at it from a Labour perspective, Labour's trying to ride two horses in this election. Is that a particularly successful strategy? Wouldn't it have been better to adopt the Liberal Democrat strategy of being just for a second referendum?
No, because a party that wants to govern the whole country has to seek to represent the whole country. And I think the real failure with the Liberal Democrats, I think it's a fantasy position that they can stop Brexit. I mean, I agree actually with what you've just said about the messaging and the comms. But the real problem is that one party's decided to support the 48% who voted one way, and the other party's decided to sort of support some of the 52% who voted the other way. Both parties seem determined to label everyone as a Remainer or a Leaver. I think you're a British citizen first, and you maybe voted one way or the other in 2016. There are lots of other things that you care about. But the Labour Party is the only party that's consistently tried to have a position which has represented the whole of the country.
But when you talk about a failure of leadership, you cannot say that you are a party that wants to govern. You cannot put forward your leader as a potential prime minister and say they are not going to have a view on the future of this country. And this is not just about having a view on the technicalities of whether we have a trade deal with this country or that country. This is about having a view on what kind of country we want to be. And for Jeremy Corbyn to say he will stay neutral on that issue, I just think that's fantasy politics.
I think if you look at the Labour Party manifesto, to suggest that doesn't set out a very clear
fantasy, the Labour Party manifesto.
To suggest that doesn't set out a very clear vision for the country, I think is unjust. I think actually the Labour Party has had a very, very clear position to begin with. It agreed with the triggering of Article 50. It endeavoured to engage in debate. It joined the negotiations with the government, which of course collapsed. It has now reached the position that in fact the only way of resolving this is through a public vote, which I personally very strongly support. And it is now going into an election with a position which is trying to speak to 100% of the British public.
But it's being all things to all people, isn't it? And in the end, if you stand in the middle of the road, you get run over.
I think the last thing you could accuse the Labour Party of is standing in the middle of the road.
You're right on everything else, but not on this.
But if you look at what happened in 2016. The Brexit, the whole Brexit saga, really, fiasco, has demonstrated these very, very deep divides in the country. Brexit, for me, I used to work in...
How would a second referendum heal those divides? That's what I've never understood with this argument.
I think most people would understand it's the best option of an array of perhaps no great options. But Parliament has singularly failed. Somehow we do have to bring this to an end.
Siobhan,
you've had a good say. Let's bring in Michael Fallon.
Well, you were doing rather nicely without me, actually, I thought. I think the public actually are ahead of both Labour and the Liberal Democrats. You can't have a serious contender for Prime Minister, as Benita said, who won't even tell you whether he's going to go for... Siobhan, I'm so sorry. For Remain or Leave. And I think the public, regard the title of a people's vote as rather disingenuous. We had a people's vote. We had a referendum. And out canvassing, the people I meet say whether they voted Remain or Leave. They regard the referendum as behind us now, and they want to see Parliament move on and do something with the result. And I think that's what the agenda is. And I think that Boris Johnson is onto that. I think the public, particularly in Leave areas, obviously feel frustrated we haven't left already. But even in Remain areas, I think the public want to see this thing sorted out and done.
But the reason it's not been is because the Tory party negotiated so badly. They established red lines which it was impossible to meet. They failed to convince the parliamentarians that, the indicative vote process, the successive historic defeats that the Tory party, both under Theresa May and now under Boris Johnson, have had. It's the Tory party mess from start to finish. It's the Tory party's fault if we've not left yet.
Just entertain the possibility that there might be a Tory majority after the election. If that happens and Boris Johnson's deal goes through Parliament and we leave under that deal on the 31st of January, is that game over for a people's vote?
Well, can I just say one thing it won't be, And this is just ridiculous for people to say it's getting Brexit done. It will not get Brexit done. It will get Brexit started.
Well, it means that we've left the EU, doesn't it?
But it doesn't get Brexit
but
done.
It means that we've actually left
But I mean, I don't know where Michael is canvassing. It's completely not the same reaction that I'm getting on the doorstep. And people don't believe this argument that if you have a majority Tory government, they take us out of the EU, that is the end of it. It absolutely isn't. What people are saying is they do not want decades of chaos and negotiation and our parliament being tied up.
Back to my question, do you accept that a second referendum after the 31st of January wouldn't... What would it be on?
Well, I would like it to be on a deal and the option to remain.
But we've already left by then. So how can you have a referendum then? Because we'll have already been got out of the EU.
So you're talking about a scenario where there is a Tory majority.
Yeah.
And I'm saying in that scenario, if we do crash out of the EU, I think that would be disastrous.
We would be leaving with a deal, wouldn't we?
We've got a deal.
But this deal
the deal would just start years and years of negotiation. It's not the end of Brexit.
Go on, Michael.
Can I just come on this? The deal actually has the date, December 2020, in it. It's not just our date. The European Union has agreed that. Both sides now want to get this trade deal done. You're quite right. The trade deal now starts after we formally leave, but we will have legally left.
I'm not disputing that.
That will be over. We go into the trade talks. Both sides have said they want to get it done by December 2020. That's a year from now. So it's not decades.
I'm not disputing that.
So
I'm saying the fact that we technically might have left the European Union does not get Brexit done. What it does is it starts the chaos. It starts the negotiation, and that will take decade. Which fine, but what does that mean?
Well, formally we exit legally, we leave the European institutions.
And we enter decades and decades of negotiations.
You keep saying decades. Both sides have agreed that this will take a year to organise.
No, they haven't. That's another
fallacy. It's in the document.
But it will take us several years to negotiate. I used to work in DG Trade, and it will take us several years to negotiate the free trade agreement. I mean, I have worked in trade negotiations.
Me too.
Okay, so there you are.
But Michel Barnier has said it is possible to do, hasn't he?
It's paragraph 135 of the political agreement that both sides have signed, and it says come into force by the end of 2020. So both sides are committed to this. I know it's complicated.
Final word.
You know, these are difficult things to do very quickly. Of course,
come on, Michael, you've worked in government. You've been a minister. Surely you do not believe for a second that we can agree those trade arrangements in a year. That is just ridiculous.
Hang on a second. Matthew hasn't had much of a say in this. And I'm sure
he had a lot of a say of leading us to this mess in the first place. I think he's had more than enough of a say on the whole thing.
I think you can get a trade deal done within the year. If you have two entirely different countries, yes, it may take longer than a year, but here's one country in the EU with entirely the same regulations at the moment, completely different situations, so it can be done within a year.
I like the fact that you believe it, but just believing things will not make it happen. It has never been done before, and it will not be done.
Should we go on to
and I think, by the way, can I just say, I think folk out there get this, because anyone, I mean, I have not got divorced. My husband may listen to this and decide that we should speed up that process, but you know, anyone who thinks that when you get divorced, the day that you get the piece of paper, that's just not true. You then have your life to unwind. And it's the same with our relationship with the European Union. We've been in there for 40 years. The notion that we're then just going to have, you know, sign a piece of paper on one day and then that's all over, it's just a fantasy. In fact, it's a lie to the British people.
Nobody suggested that, have they?
Well, with this notion that we're going to kind of get it done, it's just not true that it's done that quickly.
0345 6060 973. There are subjects other than Brexit that you could talk to our panel about.
Really?
What about some of the things that have happened in the election? I mean, the NHS, big subject today. We're going to be talking about that after 9. Let's go to Jim, who's a new caller in Cardiff. Hello, Jim.
Hi there. I wanted to talk about tactical voting. So I'm a Remainer. And I just wonder what particularly the Remainers thought that where the Conservatives are standing against Labour and it's close, should people tactically vote for Labour? Because I think it's been a little bit sort of irresponsible for the Lib Dems to be campaigning quite hard on those seats. So particularly the Lib Dem on the panel, do you think people should tactically vote for Labour in those seats?
Laura Parker from Momentum.
Well, I think yes would be my answer. I mean, the most important thing for me is that Labour does as well as possible in this election. It's really important to me that we avoid any kind of crash-out possibilities, which are still there, by the way, if we have a Tory majority. So, yes, absolutely. I think that Lib Dems should examine their conscience, and I don't believe in this sort of equidistance that Joe Simpson seems to have adopted. I think it's really important that we do what we can, not just on Brexit, but on saving the NHS, investment in public services, so I agree.
I don't know where you live, and I don't expect you to tell me where you live on the programme, but if you lived in, say, one of the Lib Dem Tory marginals in southwest London, say it's Twickenham or Carshalton and Wallington, one of those kind of places, where Labour doesn't stand an earthly chance of winning, would you vote tactically for the Liberal Democrat to keep the Tory out?
I probably would, yeah.
You would. OK, well, that wasn't quite the answer I was expecting, if I'm honest. OK. Siobhan, you've got this Remain alliance where you seem to have essentially screwed the Green Party and Plaid Cymru. They're standing down in 9 seats. You're standing down in 9 seats. They're standing down in 51. That's not exactly democratic politics, is it?
That was agreed between the three parties, looking at where we could maximise our chances of winning. So, I mean, the reality is that we had a better chance of winning in more of those seats. It's not that we've screwed them, we've agreed that between us. The one thing that I would say is we have done that alliance. We've reached out to other parties. We've absolutely done that. We've stood down where previous Conservative candidates are now standing as independents, where we think they have a better chance as well. We are definitely
What about David Gauke, somebody who has recommended that people should vote Liberal Democrat? He's standing as an independent, and yet you're standing against him.
He is. I think with David Gauke, I think it was a matter of it all happened just too late, too little too late, and I think we were looking for... Come on in. You know what amuses me here is I've just given you lots of examples of where Liberal Democrats have stood down in the national interest because we think that is the right thing to do. You've just pointed out, even in seats where Labour don't have a chance of winning, like Richmond Park, like Twickenham, they have not stood down. Why is it always put on us, always? And the thing that we are saying is we are doing all of this. We are saying to people, here are the seats that we are targeting. Here are the seats that we think we can win. Here are the seats where we have stood down for other people because we absolutely want to maximise that Remain vote in a future Parliament.
Okay.
The one thing I would say, just to add to that, is what I would say to people is even if you like your local candidate and even if you think your local Labour potential MP is a Remainer, the Labour Party is no longer a Remain party. And those Remain MPs,
but they
Labour
want a
MPs...
second referendum, just like you do.
But we don't know how they're going to... We don't know what they're going to stand for in that second referendum. But we don't know if they're going to support a Remain or a Leave deal in that referendum.
Well, according to the leader, they're not going to support either.
Labour MPs that are Remain have had 3 years to change Jeremy Corbyn on this and to change the leadership of the Labour Party, and they have failed to do that.
Matthew Elliot, should the Tory party be worried by this, whether it's a formal Remain alliance or an unofficial one?
I think there could be more tactical voting at this election, but of course, with Nigel Farage stepping down in all of the seats with Conservative MPs, and also that then generally deflating the Brexit party overall, I think the Leave side is actually pretty well coordinated and unified, so I don't think they should be too worried about it. What's also interesting is, of course, there are 2 different tactical voting websites for the Remain side. One pushes Labour seats, the other pushes Lib Dem seats.
I think there are 3 now.
3, really?
Yes.
Right.
Maybe they should have an alliance of all 3 of them. I don't know.
The whole country doesn't... I mean, people don't wake up tomorrow unable to pay their bills, not able to get their parents into social care, not able to get doctor's appointments, worrying about their young adult children who've got debts, and only think about how they voted in 2016. People have got so many concerns that go well beyond Brexit. And that's the reason why this Remain alliance or Leave alliance. I mean, there's so much more to this country and so much more we need to do to fix this country.
For all of those concerns...
Look, Siobhan, you really have spoken a huge amount in this hour so far, so let's just let Michael Fallon.
Well, I was going to say, I actually agree with that, with Laura. Brexit is not the only issue in this election. Of course it's important, and I accept it's important, for people on each side of the argument back in the referendum, but it is not the biggest issue facing this country. We're now faced, I think, with 2 completely different views of how we take this country forward. To be fair to Labour, they've been completely honest. They want to, roll forward the state, extend spending and taxation and borrowing to a level we've never seen in this country before, and we don't. We think we should be spending more on some of the public services that need more spending, but do so in a moderate and sensible way. So there is a real choice about the future of this country, which isn't actually about Brexit. It is about how we now run our economy and have decent public services.
But do you worry about the effect that the Remain alliance could have, plus also the fact that I think over 3 million people have registered to vote in the past couple of weeks. The deadline expired yesterday. Around 5,000 extra voters per constituency. That could make a massive difference, couldn't it?
Well, on the first point, we don't do deals or alliances. We think you should...
Except with the DUP.
We think you should... Well, Northern Ireland has always been slightly different, but we think in the rest of Great Britain you should have a Conservative candidate to vote for, and there is a Conservative candidate in every other seat, and we don't think you should do these kind of, Westminsterish backroom deals. Voter registration, yes, I'm delighted more people have come forward to vote. I think it's really important to keep the percentage up. It's been dropping in recent years, and there was a time when we had over 80% of people voting in general elections. So I'm pleased that more people have come forward, and people do leave it late sometimes. They've moved house or whatever, or they got a second address, or they've come back from university or whatever. And it's important that as many people as possible do vote.
Just on this, Laura, 9 million people apparently not on the electoral register. That's been reduced now to 6, so that's something. What should be done about that in future? Because this never used to happen, did it?
I welcome Michael Fallon's enthusiasm for people registering, but in fact it's interesting to see what's happened under the Conservative government, who've made it harder for people to register to vote.
How have they done that? There's a website, it takes 2 minutes.
You no longer have everyone in a household who's registered. It's been made, there are no longer provisions for registering everyone who's in a students' union. We know that the vast majority of people who are dropping off the register are young people. They are people who are mobile. They're people who are moving house frequently. I mean, it's fantastic what's happened in the last few days. I think the numbers show that the vast majority of people who've registered to vote in the last week or so are younger people. So I'm pretty confident that most of those will be people who'll be voting Labour. But we have to be really...
Why would you be confident about that?
Because in the 2017 election, every poll shown since, the Labour Party is doing better amongst the younger age range than the Tory Party.
It was actually the 30 to 45 age group that was actually more likely to vote Labour.
Well, I'm 49, I'm calling that young.
You're never 49. Goodness me.
It's never been easier to register to vote. And, I think we should make it as easy as possible. And, certainly, I was canvassing down in a university city in Canterbury the other day. There are people registering, some of them to vote Labour, some to vote Liberal Democrat, and some to vote Conservatives. We need students to vote.
I would say the one thing we do know about that younger demographic is they overwhelmingly vote to Remain. And so I think a lot of those new people that have signed up to the register will be voting Liberal Democrat.
John in Sevenoaks has texted in, thank goodness Michael Fallon is with you tonight, as I know he won't be knocking on my door.
Thanks, John. Thanks for that.
Right, let's go to another question. Nadia is in Barnet. Hello, Nadia.
Hiya.
Hi.
So I'm about to start university, and I had a question based on tuition fees. So how can the parties ensure that students aren't crippled with student debt? I know that Sam Gyamah of the Lib Dems claimed that zero tuition fees is a fantasy. So how can we, as young people, trust their policies, especially surrounding tuition fees, and ensure that we're not saddled in years of debt because of the decisions that the Lib Dems have took? I know for a fact that they are untrustworthy, especially as their leader, Joe Swinson, has voted more in line with the Tory whip than, some Conservative MPs themselves. How can we trust that they won't go into a coalition with the Conservatives?
Let's have a go at Lib Dems night tonight, isn't it?
And further enable 5 more years of disgusting austerity that will disproportionately impact young people, people like myself.
OK, well, let's try and stick on the whole tuition fees argument here, because I think that there is clear blue water. I was going to say clear yellow water, but I thought better of it. But then, of course, I did say. Michael Fallon, how do you answer, Nadia, there? Because obviously a lot of students do feel as if they are crippled with student debt.
Well, first of all, I wish her well on her course at college. It is true you're taking on debt, but you're also taking on the prospect, on average, of a higher salary than those who don't go to university. And there's always a balance to be struck between those who don't get to higher education, their parents who never got to higher education, and those who do and go on and earn more over their lifetime of employment than those who don't. So there's a balance to be struck. Now, we are looking again at the rate of interest that's being charged on student debt. It's exceptionally high given today's borrowing. It's over 6%, and we've been reviewing that, and I think you can expect some proposals along those lines a little later on.
Siobhan.
So I just want to dispel a few myths here. I know the Liberal Democrats get hammered for their decision on tuition fees, but tuition fees were brought in by a Labour government. They were absolutely supported by a Conservative government, so I think everybody needs to share responsibility for the situation we are in at the moment.
Well, I definitely don't, because I campaigned against them then.
Well, it was still a Labour Party policy, so you can't blame us for everything in the past and then distance yourself from everything that your own party did. I just think that's
decisions, and it was a bad decision, and I campaigned against it.
The one thing I would say now is I think we have committed to, I think there are some things that should be done very quickly. I think we should get back to doing maintenance grants. That's entirely unfair, so that's something that should be done, because that absolutely isn't fair for the poorest students. So that's, I think everybody should be in agreement on that. We want to do a whole review of the tuition fee structure as it currently is at the moment, but also what we're saying is, for a lot of people, they don't want to go to university, they don't aspire to go to university, it might not be the best route for them. So we also need to look at giving people who are maybe doing apprenticeships, giving people who are doing vocational training, we should also be investing in them, because at the moment actually there is very little money or funding going into that large number of young people who don't go to university. So I think we have to look at further education in the round and make sure that this is a fair system for everybody.
The trouble is students are never going to trust a word a Liberal Democrat says on tuition fees in the future, are they?
I disagree with that. I think one of the things I would say is we absolutely have to have policies going forward that are credible, that we can fund. So I think just saying we're going to wipe out tuition fees full stop from now is not a credible way going forward. We absolutely need to do a proper look at this and see how we can fund universities going forward. That's more complicated than Labour are making it out to be, I'm afraid. In terms of do students trust us? Actually, what's interesting for us is the biggest growth in our membership now is in students, and I think there was the generation obviously who we let down because of that decision that was made, but actually that's not the case for people going into university now.
Laura Parker, obviously the Labour Party has got quite a big offering on student debt. Just briefly explain what it is.
Well, it's going to abolish student fees, which I think are saddling people with, is it £57,000 is now the average debt that a student comes out with?
But you're not actually going to write off existing student debt, because that was what Jeremy Corbyn did say last time, didn't he?
I think a couple of weeks ago that he made a commitment to looking at how that could be alleviated, and I think it relates to the point about the interest rates in particular that have been paid on the debt. I agree, by the way, with pretty much everything else you said about further education. I agree with the restoration of the education maintenance allowance. I think further education has been hollowed out. I think another commitment the Labour Party has made has been to sort of provision for lifelong learning. But I think the issue of students' trust in Liberal Democrats, I think it took a battering. But I mean, there's no one from any political party that can't say at some point they've taken a
Matthew Elliot.
I can't understand when people talk about abolishing tuition fees, how they see that as being fair, because roughly half of young people go to university. What about the other half who have taken up a job after school? Why should their taxes be used to pay to subsidise the university students who will then get paid more money afterwards?
For a start, they don't necessarily get paid more money afterwards. I spent 15 years working with social workers. And who are earning really very, very badly. There are many people who are earning extremely well who didn't go to university. The point is it should be possible for everyone. And the second thing is that education is a public good. We want people to be educated, to be nurses, to be doctors, to be engineers, because we need nurses and doctors and engineers. And education is a public good, and we need to invest in it. And we need to make it possible for everyone to access it at any time in their life.
There's a bit of breaking news here from Randeep Ramesh, who's the chief leader writer at The Guardian. He says the Prime Minister's senior aide, Dominic Cummings, has resigned as a special advisor. That's according to a Cabinet Office source. Matthew Elliot, your reaction?
I think all of the SPADs resigned when the election was called, so they could actually take part in the campaigning.
No, but he didn't, because he was kept in number 10. Maybe this is the reason that he wants to be involved in the campaign.
Well, he wrote a very important blog today, urging everybody who supported the Vote Leave campaign to support Boris in the general election. So I don't think he could be both SPAD and bloggy at the same time.
So maybe that was the reason that he's had to resign, because of that blog. I don't know. OK, right, we will come to more of your questions in a second with Michael Fallon, Matthew Elliot, Laura Parker and Siobhan Benita. 0345 6060 973. Still half an hour for you to put your questions to my panel. It's 8:31, News Headlines with Serena Farrow.
Jeremy Corbyn says he's found proof of of secret talks between the government and the US about selling off parts of the NHS. The Conservatives are denying the claims, with Boris Johnson calling it total nonsense. The arts and entertainment world is mourning three much-loved stars today. The broadcaster and critic Clive James has died at the age of 80, 10 years after being diagnosed with leukemia, kidney failure and lung disease. The celebrity chef, meantime, Gary Rhodes, died shortly after falling ill during a break filming a new TV series. He was 59. And Sir Jonathan Miller, a Beyond the Fringe star in the 1960s, is being remembered for his theatre and opera achievements. And finally, charges have been dropped against more than 100 people arrested during the Extinction Rebellion protests in central London. It's after a court ruled it was wrong for Scotland Yard to introduce an effective ban on the demonstrations last month. LBC weather, well, for north and central areas it's still particularly wet. Heavy for southeast Scotland and the northeast of England as well. A low of 4 degrees.
LBC.
Urine leakage, urine leak.
Tenna Men. Pants and pads. Buy online or in shops. Tenna Men. Keep control.
Some regard me as a national treasure. Well, that's very kind of you, but let me tell you about a hidden national treasure. Cello TVs. Cello are the only British manufacturer of premium quality LED TVs, but without the hefty price tag. 16 to 65 inches, manufactured in the UK, there's a Cello TV for everyone. This Black Friday, get a 65-inch smart 4K TV for under £550. Search cello.tv.
Prices are dropping, so you could be saving in the Car Giant Black Friday sale. One giant weekend of massive price reductions on thousands of nearly new cars. There's never been a better time to save on your next car. The Car Giant Black Friday sale starts this Friday. Giant choice, giant savings. Visit cargiant.co.uk.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
You know the trainers I really wanted? I got them 70% off.
Wow, that's amazing. Where from?
Online at Zalando. They have so many Cyber Week deals on right now.
Attention travellers, we have reached our final destination, Black Friday at Zalando.
Save up to 70% on thousands of shoes, accessories and clothing. Zalando. Free to be.
Hello. If you find it hard to get a good night's sleep, try My Pillow. 45 million pillows have sold in the US, and now they're manufactured in the UK. Designed for better sleep by one of those brash Americans.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, the inventor of My Pillow, and I give you a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose.
They just can't help themselves. Mind you, My Pillow does come with a 10-year warranty. Get 30% off your first order using promo code SLEEP at mypillow.co.uk.
Global Player.
Radio, playlists and podcasts.
Where it's all together and all for free.
Download it from your App Store now.
The John Lewis and Partners Black Friday event is now on. There are hundreds of great offers across home, electricals, fashion and nursery in-store and online. So if you're starting Christmas shopping early or you've got your eye on something for yourself, now's the perfect time. Click and collect from any of our shops and also at Waitrose and Partners. Terms and conditions apply. See in-store or online for details.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 25 to 9. Let me reintroduce my panel. Laura Parker is Momentum's National Coordinator. Siobhan Benita is Liberal Democrat candidate for Mayor of London. Matthew Elliot, a political strategist, former Chief Executive of Vote Leave, now is Editor-at-Large at BrexitCentral.com. And Sir Michael Fallon, former Defence Secretary and former Conservative MP. Any pangs, Michael? Because I'm sure some MPs, when they announce they're standing down, they have a few regrets afterwards. You have no regrets at all?
Well, there were some regretful speeches. There's a final day of speeches, and there were some getting quite emotional. But, I've been 31 years there, and I think that's quite long enough for anybody, really. And I think you've got to let other people come in, and younger people, come into the party and refresh yourselves. And so I don't have regrets there. I've done my stint, I think.
A little known fact was that my first political electoral experience was working on Michael Fallon's Darlington by-election campaign in 1983.
Well, let me give you my test question.
Oh, God.
The by-election was held in March, in the middle of the winter, and it snowed on election day. What do you think the turnout was in a by-election in the northeast of England?
55%.
81.
Was it really?
Wow.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
And I remember Ozzy O'Brien. That was it, wasn't it?
There was one that three parties could have won, so there was a lot of interest in it.
Anyway, enough of that. Let's go back to your calls and questions. Sarah is a new caller in Stoke-on-Trent. Hello, Sarah.
Hi there.
Hello.
I'm afraid afraid I'm one of the little people. That lady on before, the student, Nadia, sounded very posh, and I doubt if she knows what austerity is. It came up and smacked her on the face. So these are the sort of people that are talking down to me and my family at the moment, insisting that we're natural Corbyn voters. And our family were Labour voters back in the day. And so I had a dilemma. I was going to vote for the Brexit Party, as many in our family and in our area were. And we all voted for them in the European elections, a lot of my friends. But the biggest thing on the agenda is we've had to park Brexit as not being the most important thing at the moment. The most important thing is to make sure that evil man, Jeremy Corbyn, evil because he pretends he doesn't know what's happening in his party and he's enabling these people.
Sarah, we need to get to your question.
Right, well, we won't be voting for anyone that leads momentum scum, so we're going to be voting for the Conservatives.
Well, you told my colleague you were going to ask a question about 0 hours contracts. Would you like to do that or not?
Well, I'd like to ask if there's that lady from Momentum there. I'd ask how she sleeps at night.
All right, OK, well, you're clearly not going to ask that question, so I will ask it in your place. What should the future of 0 hours contracts be, Matthew Elliot?
This is a really interesting question because, of course, we now have the whole gig economy growing up, new ways of working, away from the old regular contracts people had with big employers. So the whole of employment is changing. And I think it's right, it does. The economy is becoming more flexible now. It's been part of our economic success.
But flexible can mean exploitation as well, can't it? That's the problem.
It can, but a lot of people like the idea there's more flexibility in their lives. There are Uber drivers who like the fact they can be an Uber driver and have another job on the side. But what about the ones that don't? What about the ones that actually do feel exploited by their employer, where they don't know whether they'll have work one day to the next?
Well, worse than that, they get up in the morning,
Laura,
ready to get to work. They get to the bus stop.
But can I just apologise for that call? Because we don't often get calls that actually abuse the privilege of coming on the air, but she did.
Well, apology gratefully accepted, but I'm much more interested in talking about 0 hours contracts. There are people who get as far as the bus stop and are on the bus when they get the message telling them that they're not needed that day. And I know that because our team has just trebled in size for the election, and we brought lots of brilliant young people into our team. And when I've been talking to some of them about their experience of work, I'm genuinely horrified by the way in which some of them are treated. Now, of course, I agree with flexibility. I think it should be possible to have job shares. I think part-time working. I think enabling, working parents to work and be parents. And there are some people who want to have greater flexibility. Lots of people work as freelancers and consultants. But the notion that you're literally on the bus in the morning, on the way to work when you're told that your job doesn't exist that day, I mean, that is exploitation, and that deprives you of the ability to earn any income that day.
It's Labour's policy of abolishing all 0 hours contracts, not sort of using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, because there are people, single mothers, students, who actually like 0 hours contracts, and what you're going to do there is risk that they can't actually find any work.
No, we're going to make it possible for everybody to have the protections that they should have and then to work in a flexible way which they would like. I mean, Labour's not stopping flexibility. We want, busy parents to be able to work from 9:30 till 3 to still make it to the school gate to get their kids home. Of course. We want people on shifts to be able to manage their family lives, so you've not got one on a day shift and one on a night shift. Some people do want to go part-time, but for those people who want security, and security and flexibility should not be a trade-off between the two.
Michael Fallon.
Well, what's important, I think, is choice. You do need to make sure that people have choice. I don't want to see people exploited. When I visited the Nissan car plant in Sunderland, the drivers there were on 0 hours contracts. They wanted to choose when to do their driving the cars to the port and so on, driving really hard for a week or whatever, and then having some time off. Whereas if they were employed in the factory itself, they had no choice of their shifts. They might have to turn up at 5 a.m. or whatever. They didn't have that choice. So it is a balance between choice and some protection against being exploited.
But has the balance been got right so far? Do you think that it's gone too far one way?
Well, there are more and more people who are on 0 hours contracts and, presumably relatively happy to be on them. Now, of course, there may be some who are being exploited, and I think we should always be ready to act where that is the case. But 0 hours contracts have increased enormously in popularity over the last few years.
I don't know if people understand the implications for what this means. I mean, it means if you're a young person in a city as expensive as London and many other cities in the country, it means you can't get somewhere to live. Because when your landlord asks you how much you're earning, you don't know. I mean, this is what it really means. Apart from the fact that your daily existence is very difficult, the implications for all aspects of your life. I mean, for young adults who want to plan, starting a family. I mean, it's impossible to work in those conditions.
Siobhan? I think you are confusing those two things. I think absolutely there are people for whom they need secure and stable employment, and there is, I think, far too much exploitation going on at the moment, and we have to have protections against that. But there are other people. My 2 daughters, for example, students, a lot of students, they want 0 hours contracts. They don't actually want to be tied down to doing a minimum number of hours per week. So they like that type of flexibility. What we're saying in the Liberal Democrats is, if you have a 0 hours contract, we're saying to make up for that flexibility both ways, you should be paid 20% more in terms of the minimum wage, so that would pay for that. And actually you can earn as well, if you are working there for so many months or a year, then you earn your right to holiday pay, you earn your right to the type of protections you would have if you were on a more traditional type of contract. So I think it is about choice. It's about not trying to treat all of these things in the same manner. And I think we absolutely have to maintain that option for people to choose the way that they want to do it, while at the same time maintaining protections. And I think Labour have got this wrong by saying they want to abolish all 0 hours contracts, because I think that's misunderstanding actually how some people are currently being employed.
Just before we go to a break, Siobhan, you stood as an independent candidate for Mayor of London back, was it 2012?
2012.
And now you're a Liberal Democrat candidate. Do you find that having to toe a party line is a bit restricting?
It's, I wouldn't say it's restricting, it's testing my memory in that I have to make sure that I am up to speed on everything. There was definitely a freedom about being an independent, because in the morning I could get up and I could decide what my line was on things. But actually at the moment I'm so proud, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I'm so proud to be a Liberal Democrat at the moment, because I think we are the truly progressive party that is fighting for a better future for this country. And I find that hugely motivational at the moment.
And the Liberal Democrats of 2012 weren't?
To be honest, I wasn't looking at the Liberal Democrats in 2012 because I hadn't really.
Very few people were, because I think they got 9%.
Yeah, maybe. What I did know though, and what struck me when I was running as a candidate then, is how similar my manifesto was to the Liberal Democrat manifesto, and I reached out to Brian Paddock at the time. So I know I've always been liberal. I just didn't realise I was a Liberal Democrat.
Okay, right. We'll take more of your calls in a second. It's coming up to 8:45.
LBC, your election station.
In 2007, I had around 3,000 or so rough sleepers in Brent.
Well, the last figures that we have for 2017 is that there were 4,751 people sleeping rough in the whole of England, of whom 3,000 were in Brent. Are you sure you've got your figures right?
Holding politicians to account.
No, you're the security minister. Why did?
Imagine where you're going.
I bet you can. Why did the Conservative Party decide to fake being a verified Twitter account?
Answers to the questions that matter.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to pretend I've got the answer to that.
You have no idea how much one of your signature policies costs at all.
No,
nothing.
No, I don't know that particular figure. No.
LBC Election 2019.
Credit limit of up to £1,500. What do you have to do to get it? Simple. Get online and check if you're eligible for an Ocean credit card in minutes without affecting your credit score. For your Ocean credit card, visit ocean.co.uk now and get all that from Ocean. Intelligent Lending Limited is a credit broker. Capital One, the exclusive lender. Representative 39.9% APR variable. Borrow and spend responsibly.
Some regard me as a national treasure. Well, that's very kind of you, but let me tell you about a hidden national treasure. Cello TVs. Cello are the only British manufacturer of premium quality LED TVs, but without the hefty price tag. 16 to 65 inches, manufactured in the UK, there's a Cello TV for everyone. This Black Friday, get a 65-inch smart 4K TV for under £550. Search cello.tv.
Did you really get those trainers half price?
Yep, nice, right? From Zalando. They have new deals every day for Cyber Week.
This is an express service to a whole week of cyber deals, calling out footwear, sportswear, winter looks, designer styles, and more.
Cyber Week at Zalando. Save up to 70% on your favourite styles. Zalando. Free to be.
I can't pretend to be a great celebrity.
Whatever the size of your business, now you can take card payments square and fair. Get next business day payments as standard, with no monthly fees and free point-of-sale software. Learn more at square.com/fair. Authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority for the provision of payment services. Terms and fees at square.com/fair.
That works the thingamabob.
Hash browns in dressing gowns, bacon rolls and morning scrolls, sausage bagels at breakfast tables, or maybe flat whites after late nights, pancakes with news updates, flatbreads and bedheads, breakfast wraps after morning naps, or perhaps a McMuffin without leaving bed, because now we deliver instead. Download Uber Eats and enjoy McDonald's breakfast at home. At participating McDonald's, see mcdonalds.co.uk/McDelivery to see if there's one near you. Serving times and delivery fee apply. See Uber Eats app.
You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit, so you can keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. Plus, get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and we can quote by video call after work or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
12 minutes to 9 here on LBC. With us, Michael Fallon, Matthew Elliot, Laura Parker and Siobhan Benita. Lewis is a new caller from Stoke-on-Trent. Lewis, you have a most fantastic question. Do put it.
Hello there. I'm 19 years old. It's going to be the first general election I can vote in. And in all the discussions I've had with people at work and the various things that I do, everyone seems to be set in their own mind. They don't want to hear what anyone else has to say, and they think what they think and just sort of dismiss anyone else who says anything. So I would like the panel to set the example and tell me the last time someone told them something or they read something that made them change their mind or change their views on something political, and hopefully show the people listening tonight that you need to challenge your ideas and you need to hopefully try and change your mind, or if not, strengthen your argument about what you think.
It's really spooky you should ask that, and I'm just saying this to give them time to think of something here, because yesterday I wrote half a chapter in my forthcoming book about exactly this issue, things that I've changed my mind on over the years. I used to be a speaker for the European movement in the 1980s. I've certainly changed my mind on that one. Matthew Elliot, can you think of anything?
That's a really good question. The one that springs to mind for me is I set up a group called Big Brother Watch back in, I think it was 2009, all for civil liberties, against CCTV, against the database state and ID cards and that sort of thing. And that was before the whole tech revolution and, of course, big tech companies having lots of data about individuals as well. And also, I think there's a security element here as well, and my views have changed on this. I'm not quite sure where they've evolved to, but I'm certainly not as civil libertarian as I was.
Okay. I set up the campaign for fixed-term parliaments. I think I regret that now. Michael Fallon.
We certainly do. I changed my mind on capital punishment. It was quite common when I joined Parliament in the mid-80s for Conservative MPs to be in favour of capital punishment, and I think I recall it being quite difficult to be selected as a candidate if you weren't in favour of capital punishment. But I've changed my mind on that, as I think a lot of people have, not least because some of the unsafe convictions that followed, some of the terrorist atrocities that we saw in the 70s. And I think a lot of other people have changed their mind as well. And of course now it's beyond the pale. It's, I think, almost illegal under the European Convention of Human Rights in any event. But that is something I've definitely changed my mind.
Siobhan.
Yeah, I can think of two things actually. One is Heathrow expansion. I used to be in favour of Heathrow expansion, and now I'm absolutely not. I think if you believe there's a climate crisis, you absolutely have to make sure that that runs through all of your policies, and it's probably the most important thing that as public leaders we should all do. And the other thing is legalisation of cannabis. I can't remember when I changed my mind on this, but I absolutely believe now that it is the right thing. I can promise you I wasn't, but I think it's absolutely for the safety of people, for the safety of Londoners. Obviously, that's where I'm coming from. It's not why should we legalise cannabis, it's why haven't we done it already?
Laura?
Do you know what? I'm sitting here thinking, blimey, I'm just going to confirm all their views that I can't think, but I'm really struggling. But what I would say about my politics is that, I mean, do you know what? I'm not sure you've changed my mind, but in that little break we just had, it was really interesting talking to you about what you said about zeros contracts. I hadn't read your manifesto. The thing about paying the 20% premium I thought was very interesting. I mean, I'm not sure you've changed your mind, but I will genuinely go away and think about it. For the rest, I've got to be completely honest. I'm struggling, but I'll think of something in the pub, and then you'll have me back on.
So you've had all of this time. You can't think of one single thing you've ever changed your mind on.
Do you know why? Because I was listening to the others. I got distracted. I mean, I do agree with you on cannabis, by the way.
Yeah, good.
By the way, I think I also agree with you on Heathrow. I know, but. Can I send you an SMS afterwards?
Feel free, and I'll read it out at the 9 o'clock hour.
See, we have the best policies in the Lib Dems.
Lewis, you are 19 years old. Have you changed your mind on anything?
Do you know, just as you were all talking, I thought, I wonder if they turn it back on me. So I've thought of something. And it was actually when I was in high school, we were doing euthanasia in philosophy. And originally I was completely, you decide your own life. You need to, if you feel uncomfortable with the life you've got, you decide when you'll die. And considering I'm an atheist, it actually surprised me that a quote from the Pope changed my view on this. And he said, if euthanasia is legalised, it becomes a duty rather than a right to die. And that really made me think about, you'll feel bad if your family are coming and spending time out of their jobs to come and see you if you're in hospital. If you don't want to die, you might feel, even though your family might not want you to, you might feel pressured like it's your duty to give them the benefit of not having to support you in that way. So I'm sort of on the fence with it now. So that's where I've changed my mind on something, yeah.
Well, it's a great question, and thank you for putting it. I think I've gone the other way from you on euthanasia, but there we go. Right, we only have 6 or 7 minutes left. Daniel is a new caller in Newcastle. Daniel, what would you like to ask?
Hi. So my question is, why is anti-Semitism, which of course is a problem in the Labour Party, talked about so much when racism, such as especially Islamophobia, is talked about so little in about the Conservative Party?
Okay, all right, Daniel, thank you for that. Michael Fallon?
Well, first of all, where Conservative candidates have been caught tweeting in anti-Islamic rants or anything like that, they've been investigated, they've been suspended and so on. And Boris Johnson has apologised. He's apologised for his own particular comments in some of his journalism. If that caused offence, it's right, you should apologise. The problem is, on the Labour side, we've had no apology. We've had nothing at all from Labour to absolutely condemn anti-Semitism. The leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, was asked 3 or 4 times in an interview, I think, yesterday.
Well, he has condemned anti-Semitism.
He's condemned it, but he still hasn't apologised for the hurt that's caused. And there clearly is some kind of problem inside the Labour Party, because this has gone on there now, for months and for years. They haven't been able to get a grip of this issue.
But the accusation is that the Conservative Party isn't taking this seriously, Islamophobia.
Well, that isn't true. If there's any instance of Islamophobia, anything reported, it is investigated. We have a strong code on that, and I can assure you that it is taken extremely seriously.
Okay, Laura Parker?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's true. In fact, it's not true to say that Jeremy Corbyn hasn't apologised. He has apologised in the past.
But he didn't last night, did he? Given 4 opportunities to.
And I don't know why. Because I know him and I work for him, and I know that he is genuinely very sorry about this. So, I also know he's recognised, and I agreed with him, that the party has not responded decisively enough or fast enough. Work is now going to improve procedures. I mean, my own organisation has been absolutely unequivocal. We issued a statement in April last year where we spelt out that we acknowledged the anger, the upset and the despair within the British Jewish community, and recognised the party's failure to deal with this in a decisive manner. And we've tried to do sort of political education work since. So we've produced a number of films on the issue of racism in general and anti-Semitism specifically. We've had one film that's been seen by over 2 million people, explaining, not obviously that's way beyond our own membership and beyond the party's membership, about anti-Semitic tropes. But, I worked for 15 years in human rights, and at the core of human rights practice is anti-discrimination. And you can never say that you've done enough. I would say, just finally on the point of the Prime Minister, his comment about Muslim women and looking like letterboxes, that's not the sign of a person who takes Islamophobia seriously. And there is a frightening rise of race-related hate crime in the UK, and I think it's incumbent upon all politicians and all political activists to call it out.
Matthew Elliot.
I was involved in Sajid Javid's leadership campaign earlier this year, and of course this issue came up during the leadership election, and of course he famously called for an inquiry in the Conservative Party into Islamophobia.
What's happened to that?
So they're going to do a more general inquiry into the issue of racism more generally, and it's quite striking that Saeed Avazi, one of the sort of leading campaigners against this within the Conservative Party, is brought up the idea, thinks Boris is doing the right thing, has accepted the apology he's made for Islamophobic comments he's made in the past. I think it's quite powerful, that. So he's apologised, unlike Jeremy Corbyn.
Siobhan?
I think both parties should be utterly ashamed of themselves. I think Sajid Javid yesterday said Boris Johnson had nothing to apologise for, and we saw Jeremy Corbyn yesterday 4 times failing to apologise in that interview. And you've got the two parties here trying to say who's worse. Actually, they both have huge issues with racism. Going back to your caller's question, though, why is anti-Semitism seem to be brought up more with the Labour Party? It's because when I grew up, the Labour Party was always the party that you could turn to, because they would stand up for the underdog, they would stand up for minority groups, they would be the party that would call out racism and discrimination. They cannot claim to be doing that now, and that's why people hold them to a higher standard, and they're failing.
Right, quick final text from Pauline in Redbridge. With General Election Day just a few weeks away, it's actually 2 weeks away, what is the most amusing thing that's happened to you during an election campaign or on election day itself? Well, again, giving you a little time to think. On an election day, which was the day before my final exams at university in 1985, I was a Conservative County Council candidate in Norwich, and I was taking 3 old ladies to vote in my bashed up Ford Cortina Mark III, and I turned right into the polling station, and this guy came on a motorbike and hit my side and went straight over the bonnet. So I ended up directing the traffic, and I never knew what happened to the old ladies because I couldn't take them home. And then I went round to the guy's house later on, and there was a Vote Labour sticker in the window. Draw your own conclusions. Michael Fallon, you must have lots of anecdotes.
A few anecdotes, none particularly amusing. I got bitten during one election by a terrier, a Jack Russell Terrier, that bit my kneecap, and I couldn't get the dog out. And it was actually hanging from my leg, and I was trying to wave this thing off with a undecided voter standing on the doorstep in front of me. I wasn't quite sure whether to hit the dog or whether to just stand there in pain trying to shake this dog off.
I hope you chose the latter. Matthew?
In my days of canvassing, I have had somebody open the door stark naked.
Oh, that was my story.
Trick is look into the eyes. Just look at the eyes.
Siobhan?
Well, mine is a dog story as well. So I've had an intern working with me. I took him out literally the first door that he knocked on. Nobody at home. He put the leaflet through the door, got bitten by a dog, quite a serious bite on his finger. So we had to stop the canvassing. I had to take him to the nearest pharmacy. And he actually happens to be from Transylvania. So he was very concerned that he might have rabies. So I had to explain that we don't have rabies.
Laura, did you look him in the eye?
Well, I noticed he was naked, so that would suggest I didn't immediately look him in the eye. But then I very quickly looked him in the eye. I nearly forgot to vote once.
Well, because you were too busy knocking up other people.
And then suddenly thought, bloody hell, and pegged it round. I don't think we were going to lose by 1 anyway. I'd have obviously had to lie if we had lost by one.
Well, I've got another one. I knocked on a woman's door once and she said, I've got half a mind to vote for the SDP, which dates me, obviously. I said, well, half a mind's all you need, really, isn't it? The door was slammed in my face. Michael Fallon, Matthew Elliot, Laura Parker, Siobhan, Benita, thank you very much for joining us on Cross Question. You can listen back on the Cross Question podcast, or it'll be on YouTube as well for your delight and delectation. Coming up in a moment, we're going to talk about the NHS. Is it for sale to the Americans? It's 9:01.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
It is endlessly repeated by the Labour Party that the NHS is somehow up for sale.